Hey, what's up guys? My name is Michael Westbrook. Thanks for checking out this video. I just recently released an HX Stomp preset pack, and this got me thinking about just presets in general for the HX Stomp or the Helix. Presets are kind of a tricky thing, right? Everyone has a different setup. People are using different guitars. They're listening in different ways. They're using different pickups or different pedals. So many different variables, and it's kind of impossible to make sure that everyone has the exact same experience. That being said, presets allow you to get great sounds more quickly, more easily, and just learn more about the format and how people do things and how they set them up. With all that in mind, today I want to share 5 tips for getting the most out of your HX Stomp presets or Helix presets. We're going to try to get all these in 5 minutes. So let's get into it. The first tip is to change the input impedance. So this setting is actually specific to each preset. So if you change between presets, this changes. But changing the input impedance is a good way to change the overall brightness of a preset or a patch. By turning it to the left, you can actually darken the sound a bit, or turning it to the right, you can brighten it. This is great for single coil guitars or even getting humbuckers to open up a little more when you're all the way to the right. Number 2 is to change the cab or the impulse response on the preset. Whether you're playing through an amp or a modeler, changing the cabinet or the speaker is probably the biggest way to change the overall sound. Most people have their speaker preferences or cabinet preferences whether they realize it or not. For me, a Celestion Greenback is probably one of my favorite all-time speakers. By changing the cabinet or the impulse responses, you can greatly affect the overall EQ of a setting as well as the response. Alnico speakers typically compress a little more, or depending on how the cabinet or the IR was made, they're going to have different frequency responses and just feel differently. You might find by changing these that you can get something that's more suited to your overall sound than what's initially found in the preset. Number 3 relates to the IR block in the HX Stomp or Helix. There's a setting there called high cut. And this is a great way to kind of darken the overall sound. Don't be afraid to bring this way down. Even if you're going down to like 7, 6K, 5K, if it sounds good, it is good. Another nice thing about the high cut is that it is preset specific as well. So this is a good way to shape each individual preset separately. Tip number 4 is not preset specific. So that's the only downside to this, but it's using the global EQ. The global EQ is a really powerful way to shape presets in the HX Stomp. If you're out of blocks and you can't add an EQ, this is a way that you can EQ the overall sound without taking up that processing power. This allows you to darken things up, to cut some low end, to shape the mid-range more specifically than you can with the high cut or the low cut. The only downside about the global EQ is just trying to remember if you do start using different presets or using it in a different way, to turn that off or to change that, because it does affect every preset no matter what preset you're on. So one thing specifically here about the global EQ, we'll just take the mid-range for instance. So here we can select the frequency, right? It's a pretty wide range of frequencies we can grab here. But what I want to talk specifically about is this Q control here. Basically what the Q is how wide or narrow that EQ is. So you can even see in the picture here how some of them are more of a gentle curve and some are more specific to a particular frequency. So as our Q is down, we get a wider curve, which means that we're just gently shaping things. This is a way to just kind of overall affect the sound in a gentle way. Whereas if we want to get more specific about a particular frequency that we want cut out or boosted, then we can bring this Q up. And bringing it up, I mean, this is pretty tight right here. This is going to be really specific frequencies that we can affect. I tend to keep the Q down a good bit, so I'm just gently shaping certain frequencies in the overall sound. And then of course for the global EQ, to see what we're doing and how we're affecting everything, we can press this save button right here. That kind of just takes the whole EQ in and out. The nice thing about the global EQ too is that we can use our low cut or a low frequency. So there's essentially 5 different bands that we can use to shape our overall sound here. Tip number 5 actually doesn't have anything to do with the HX Stomp or the Helix, but it's to change your guitar. Sometimes it just might not be the right preset for your guitar or for the guitar that you're using. For instance, if you're using a higher gain preset and you're playing a Tele or a Strat, it just might not really be dialed in for a guitar like that. That's not to say that you can't use higher gain presets with guitars like that, but however the preset was dialed in, it just might not be a good fit for that guitar. Another thing I typically do on single coil guitars is use the tone knob on the guitar as well. Whether I'm using a real amp or a modeler, a lot of times on my Tele, I'm turning the tone knob down almost halfway. For me, that's a good way to kind of level the playing field between my single coil guitars and my guitars with humbuckers or P90s. This kind of puts the overall brightness and EQ of each guitar in the same ballpark, and allows me to switch between them without having drastic changes in my sound. Hopefully these 5 tips have been helpful. All of these will allow you to get more out of your presets. Whether you're using my presets or someone else's, these things will help you dial those in more for your setup and your sound. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my HX Stomp presets below, as well as the custom IRs that I've made. There are also Amazon affiliate links to some things that I use and love. I do make a small commission from those, and especially in times like these, it's super helpful for you guys to check them out and buy anything you might use. Alright, until next time, hopefully sometime soon, I'll see you out there.